let's understand objects in JavaScript. And this is, in my opinion, probably the most important concept that you'll get in JavaScript, because objects are basically able to represent everything you could represent in the real world. So let's imagine you have a car. Now we're going to define a variable, for example, that has the name car. And similar to a real car in the real world, we can define properties that define how our car behaves, for example. And we can say we are defining an object by using opening and closing brackets like this. Inside of these brackets, we can now define certain properties. So we could, for example, say our car has a certain speed. And now to define properties, we're going to use a name, a property name like speed, for example, and then a colon followed by the value. So our speed could, for example, be 254. Now we could also, for example, define a name for our car. So since I really don't know anything about cars, I'm just going to use whatever, for example. And now let's say this car also has a price. So this price is maybe $19.99. Really realistic, guys. But yeah, as you can see, you can basically say pretty much whatever. You can also say has owner. So does this car already have an owner? And this could, for example, be false. So now you have this car, which could basically represent a real car in the real world, for example. If you are, for example, imagining to code an online store where you sell cars, this could be an object that represents one of the cars you're selling, for example. Obviously, this could also be a t-shirt if you wanted to create a t-shirt right here, whatever. So this is how you create a car. So how can you access the properties of a car? So to do so, let's console.log some of the properties. And there are two main ways to access a property of a car, or to access the property of an object. And the first one is using the dot notation. So I can, for example, say car. So type in the name of the object, which is car in our case, followed by a dot. And now you already see Visual Studio Code gives you all of the properties you've defined. So now we can, for example, access our name. We're going to console.log the name in the constant. As you can see, we get the name of our car right here. So dot notation would be the first way. The second way would be bracket notation. And both of these ways work perfectly fine. So you can just choose whatever you want. So obviously we can use brackets, and then we can just use the property inside of quotes, basically. So we can say we want to access our price. We're going to run the code, and now we get the price inside of the console. So how can I update a certain property? And this works pretty much exactly the same. We can, for example, say car.price is now equal to 29.99. And now we're going to console or run the code once again, and we're going to see in the console we updated the property. And you can obviously also use the bracket notation. So let's say we want to update the price, and now we want to have $199.99. And as you can see, this works exactly the same. To add a new property, you can basically use the same kind of notation once again. So let's say now we want to have an owner name. So the car does not have an owner, but it has an owner name. Makes a lot of sense, but doesn't really matter in this case. Let's say the owner of this car is Jonas, for example. And now we're going to use our owner name, and we're going to console.log it. And now we see we have an owner name. And you can also do the same by using owner name, for example, by using this notation, or let's say owner names. And now we're having Jonas and Vinny, for example, and we're going to run the code, and we don't have an owner name, but we should have owner names. So we're running this, and now we have Jonas and Vinny. So as you can see, you can also add a property by using dot or the bracket notation. So dot and bracket notation works for pretty much everything. How can we delete a property? And in order to do so, you can just use the delete keyword. So you can say delete car.speed, for example. And now let's log speed inside of the console. And as you can see, we get undefined because we just deleted it. And obviously, you can also use the bracket notation if you want to. So this would just result in the same result. Now you can also check whether a property exists. So we could, for example, go ahead, say car.hasOwn property, and now we can name the property, which could be speed, for example. We're going to run the code, and now we see that this is true because we obviously have speed. If we say we want to check whether we have speed 1, we're going to get, oops, I have to save the file. We're going to get false because we obviously don't have speed 1. So now instead of using hasOwn property, we can also use another syntax, which could be using quotes, using opening and closing quotes, stating the name of the property we are looking for. And now we're looking whether speed is in car. So whether the property speed is in our car object. We're going to save the code, and we're getting true. So obviously if we are looking for speed 1, for example, we're getting false because we don't have speed 1.